Hello and warm welcome to this week's edition of Politics Today. And in this programme we'll be discussing how our parliamentarians are about to vote this month on one of the most extreme and anti-Christian legislation that we've seen over a decade, and how that we could be following in France's footsteps by enshrining abortion in their constitution, and we could be following in the same footsteps. And this is a real danger for our nation. And we're talking about the dangers of decriminalising abortion. And in this programme today, I'm joined by Tim Dieppe of Christian Concern, together with Maureen, the Vice President of Christian People's Alliance. So welcome to the programme. I have to say thank you, Tim, to you and all of you at Christian Concern for defending our Christian freedoms in the UK. But have you ever came across a campaign that is so relevant and so important as we face the prospect of our government voting on decriminalising abortion in their flagship legislation on crime and justice?
Well, Simon, it's a really big deal. It's a very significant moment, I think, in the history of the nation. It's certainly been the biggest change to abortion laws since abortion, I think, became legalised in 1967. A massive change. It's a very significant move to sort of devalue the life of the unborn child and say there should be no repercussions for a woman who terminates her pregnancy for whatever reason at whatever stage of pregnancy as well. So it's a very significant moment, and I really hope the church rises up and wakes up and prays and takes action and makes MPs aware of just how big a deal this is.
Absolutely. I also got to thank the Christian People's Alliance for your strong stance on abortion. You must be one of the very few political parties in this country willing to make a stand on this issue and share with us how this is actually pleases the Lord's heart and does protect the unborn.
Absolutely. It's our job as Christians to promote what God loves and what he hates. God loves it when we promote life from conception to natural death. It's who he is. He's a life giver. So as a Christian party, it's our job to promote what he loves. He hates when we terminate the life of an unborn child. He says it in his scripture. He hates that. He calls it shedding innocent blood. And it's something he abhors. And as Christians, it's our job to promote and spread the message that God is a God of life and not death. And he doesn't like it when nations make a covenant with death. And he really does not like that. So it's our job to promote what he likes and what he doesn't like.
Excellent. Tim, what are your thoughts on what is happening on the other side of the English Channel in France as the French Republic has now enshrined abortion into the French constitution, effectively the first nation in the world to decriminalise abortion?
Well, it's quite shocking and appalling, isn't it, Simon, that they would do this? It's obviously a reaction to Roe versus Wade being overturned a couple of years ago, and the feminist movement is very keen to sort of distance themselves from that and show we're different to that. A massive, an incredibly overwhelming vote, wasn't it? I think 10 to 1, 780 versus 80 or something like that in the Parliament. A huge overwhelming support, and I gather the popular opinion is also massively in favour of this. It is an extraordinary move, a very significant move, and the way it was celebrated as well, just kind of sickening really to celebrate with slogans displayed on the Eiffel Tower and stuff. I mean, it's really quite disturbing, Simon. I mean, I take a bit of, the kind of consolation away is that the law in France is still that the legal limit is 14 weeks with various exceptions. But here it is 24 weeks here, and then the move to decriminalise it completely. How come we're so much higher than that? 24 weeks versus 14 weeks. Extraordinary, really. But there they are. They've put it in the Constitution to try and sort of enshrine it and say it can't be changed, it can never be reversed. And it is hard to reverse because you need a massive majority to change the Constitution and so But they've put huge amount of effort, parliamentary time, prioritising. We've got to have this enshrined in our law. I mean, gosh, it really is incredibly rebellious and such disrespect for human life, I think.
And Maureen, you mentioned before God's perspective on the whole topic of abortion, but what are your thoughts on what France has just done only last night, as of this recording, to enshrine abortion in their constitution, the first nation in the world to decriminalise abortion, to incredible thunderous applause in the French Parliament, and then to actually broadcast this and show and light up the Eiffel Tower in defiance. Just share with your thoughts on this historical occasion that's occurred in France.
It's very sad for France. I mean, they are proverbially shooting themselves in the foot, basically, because their birth rate's already dropping. In fact, it's only 1.87 per woman in France at the moment. The replacement rate is 2.7. So they are in danger of really sort of ending their own population. Because the Bible says in Psalm 106 that God was berating the children of Israel for sacrificing their children. And he said, because of this sin, I'm going to cause those that hate you to rule over you. Now we see that the Muslim community in France don't seem to have the same issue with abortion. They are having 4, 5, 6 children. So essentially, France can experience them being, well, kind of, I won't say outbred, but by the Muslim community, because at the moment, their birth rates have fallen 4 times in a row in consecutive years. And it doesn't show any signs of picking up. So they don't reverse this situation, they are going to find themselves in the minority. And politically, in every sphere of their society, this will not be good, because Islam, Muslims do not like the West, and they don't like French, and they don't like France. So they can find themselves being ruled by those that hate them.
Also, the other thing is just kind of glorifying it, isn't it? To think that, can our nation sink any lower in their moral depravity as to broadcast this on the Eiffel Tower?
It's the celebration of evil, isn't it? It's the celebration
Exactly.
of immorality. That's the thing that really is quite shocking and disturbing, I think, for people. And that's what kind of that shows the kind of depravity and rebellion about this. That they find this is something to celebrate. Hey, we're celebrating giving more rights to women to abort babies, to terminate babies, and put it in the constitution so it can never be changed. What a celebration! It's an extraordinary thing to celebrate, isn't it?
Well, and Tim, what are your thoughts, not only in this historic vote to enshrine abortion in France's constitution, but also the quote from the new French Prime Minister, Gabriel Attal, who said this. He says, "We are haunted by the suffering and the memory of so many women who are not free. We owe a moral debt to all women who suffered in their flesh. Today, the present must respond to history. To enshrine this right in our constitution is to close the door on the tragedy of the past and its trails of suffering and pain. It will further prevent reactionaries from attacking women. Let's not forget that the train of oppression can happen again. Let's act to ensure it doesn't, that it never comes to this day," he added. "I will say to all women within our borders and beyond, today is the era of a world of hope begins." Nothing about the unborn child.
Well, that's the thing, isn't it? They expresses sorrow and horror at the fate of women. Where's the sorrow and horror at the fate of the unborn, who actually end up dying as a result of this and don't get to see life and don't get to grow up, and millions of babies whose lives have not been lived as a result of abortion in France and in the UK. It's about 10 million in the UK now since it was legalised here. So where is the shock and horror and appall and just sorrow really over all of those lives that have been cut short in the womb? And why are people not sorry about that? That's my concern. That it's all the wrong way around, really.
Yeah. Maureen, I first became aware of the government's decision to actually decriminalise abortion, but very cleverly through amendments to the government's flagship crime and justice bill. But what horrified me the most was seeing an article in the Telegraph, an interview with our health secretary, saying that she actually might vote for the decriminalisation of abortion, as and she and other members of Rishi Sunak's cabinet have. Now, the reason I think this is such a serious issue is because it grieves the Lord's heart. And as you rightly said, the shedding of innocent blood brings a curse. And I think if this legislation is passed into law and into statute, it will effectively mean they'll bring a bigger curse and judgment of God upon our nation than it already is in. We're in the midst of fighting against Islamists who want to threaten our democracy. We want to call upon God for help. And then our government allows a vote on the decriminalisation of abortion. But my disgust is not so much at the government, but the apathy, the indifference, and the plight of Christians in the church regarding this issue. This is why I'm doing 2 programmes on Politics Today on this topic, because I just sensed in my spirit this is the most dangerous legislation against Christians, against the sanctity of life we've seen in over a decade.
Absolutely, Simon. There's an alarming apathy in the church in regards to abortion. It's just stunning. I don't personally really understand it, because this is of the problems that society has, particularly Western society, abortion is probably the biggest one. And one of the reasons is, if you look at the Old Testament, the penalties for a woman who is pregnant being struck by somebody and that child dying, the penalty of that person who struck the blow is death. So as far as God is concerned, that life in the mother is as equal or as valuable as a person outside of the womb. So that tells you the level at which God is concerned with this problem. But the church seems to be disengaged. Now, I don't know if it's a really issue of the church is disengaged generally about political issues, which they seem to be, even when in issues of marriage is concerned. But also our leaders, now it's really down to the pastors and the leaders to take the lead in this situation and actually inform their congregants about what's going on, and actually encourage engagement of their congregation to fight this battle. Now, I find that the Catholic Church has a different perspective on it. They are very engaged in the battle for life. They are the ones who are protesting outside of abortion clinics, not protesting so much, but at least, having vigils outside of abortion clinics. They are the ones who are having the campaigns. They are the ones engaged and really on the front lines of this battle. But the Pentecostal evangelical church seem to be sitting back and doing absolutely nothing. Now, this is one of my big bugbears, really. It's something I'm really concerned about. It's really part of my message going forward as a CPA candidate. But to be frank, Simon, I don't really have a really direct answer as to why they are so apathetic. But it needs to be addressed, it needs to change immediately, because it's a serious matter.
Very serious. Life and death. And Tim, can you just unpack for us what is being proposed regarding these 2 amendments that have been added to the government's criminal justice bill that is looking to go through Parliament any time this month, and the seriousness of this legislation and the need for the church to really wake up, because through your excellent ministry and organisation, Christian Concern, you are bringing awareness on this issue. You are telling your supporters to write to their members of Parliament and raise this with them as an important issue, because this is absolutely vital for the spiritual health of this nation and to protect the innocent, which are the unborn.
Yes, so Simon, you're right. There's an amendment to the criminal justice bill. It's kind of extraordinary to me and to us, I think, that you've got this, like you say, flagship criminal justice bill, and then they tag on this thing as if it's kind of an afterthought, just a little amendment. But it's actually, it's like, a bigger deal than the whole bill itself. It's kind of, the bigger change to the law than effectively the main bill. And surely it should be like a bill in its own right to have a proper debate on it and proper time to it, proper discussion about it and so on. But it's an amendment has been proposed. It will be debated in Parliament at report stage. We don't know the dates yet, but it will be sometime, probably the next few weeks or so. And it'll be voted on. And it'll be very interesting to see how it gets voted. I mean, we've seen this Parliament voting for telemedicine abortion. We've seen this Parliament vote for buffer zones in abortion. So this Parliament is very, very liberal on abortion. And I worry that this amendment could get passed, which would mean that a woman is able to procure or carry out her own abortion for any reason with no penalty right up to term, right up to the day before it is born, and no penalty and no sanction. That's just fine. It's basically, you know, our system, our law saying it's fine to just disregard, you know, terminate, end the life of the unborn child right up to birth just because you don't like the sex of the baby, you don't like the colour of the eyes if that's determinable, you've decided, oh, I'd rather not have this for now, you know, whatever it might be. And that's such disregard for the sanctity of human life. And these could be babies that are thoroughly viable outside the womb. Not that that makes them any more valuable or less valuable than you know, pre-viability, but you know, and this is also a massive danger to the women themselves, because the way they would have to do this, a doctor would still be obliged to obey the law of 24 weeks, which is still an extraordinarily high number of weeks. But the woman could obtain the pills by telemedicine abortion, either giving fake gestation, which we've demonstrated through Mystery Client Series is entirely possible and happens, and then obtains these pills and takes them after the 10-week limit, which the drug manufacturers themselves say it's not safe after 10 weeks. Now, I don't think it's safe before 10 weeks. I mean, 1 in 17 people end up in hospital from taking these pills, so we've found. You know, that's not a safe you know, level of complexities. When you get beyond that 10 weeks, it's much, much higher than that. And lots of people will have extreme bleeding, extreme hemorrhage, extreme pain, and will require hospitalization and surgery, and it could actually threaten their lives. So it's very, very dangerous and traumatic for the women themselves as well, not to speak of the actual unborn child whose life is being ended by this. So it's kind of appalling to think that this is a moral thing to do. Oh, let's say it's fine for a woman to take these pills whenever they want to and just, you know, not have any sanction and not have any sense of this is wrong, even if the woman has lied, knowingly has lied, which are the cases, the very few cases that have been prosecuted in this. It's well known the woman has lied and known what they're doing and so on. And the courts can be lenient on that, and they sometimes are lenient on it, you know. But the message from the law is that it is wrong to terminate the life of a baby beyond the 24 weeks for any and every reason whatsoever. And that's what the law should continue to say, that this is wrong, it's not good, it's disapproved, society should disapprove of it. And that moral message will be eliminated by decriminalising abortion. And it basically says that the value of a human life pre-birth is totally disposable by the woman, and that's a very, very sad indictment on our society indeed.
Maureen, share your thoughts with us on our current crop of parliamentarians, because it seems that the vast majority of them have lost their moral compass, including most of those in Rishi Sunak's cabinet, who most probably will be, according to recent news reports, be voting for the decriminalisation of abortion because it's seen as the liberal thing to do. But share with us the kind of depths of depravity that our members of parliament have actually sunk to if they actually vote for this in parliament and it becomes legislation.
Indeed, Simon, I'd just like to quote Mother Teresa. She said, there are two victims here, a dead baby and a dead conscience. Now, I suspect, and you would agree with me, I'm sure you will too, Tim, that a dead conscience is what's been displayed by our parliamentarians. If you are in favour of, you know, the termination of an innocent life in the womb, and you're quite happy to terminate that life up till birth, what does that say about you? A baby is the most vulnerable, the most defenceless person that there is. And it is a person, and this is the whole issue. They have dehumanised a baby to the point where it's now a clump of cells. It can be just, its life can be just ended just like that with legislation. Mother Teresa also said among other things, the right to abortion has pitted mothers against children and women against men. She also said the country that accepts abortion is the poorest of the poor. Now we are in danger of becoming the poorest of the poor, not just in terms of economically, but in terms of our morality. So we've been on a sliding scale of morality probably since the 60s, since 1967 when the Abortion Act was first put into force. We have been on a sliding scale of morality since then, and this is just another step in that scale to further depths of depravity for our parliamentarians and for our nation, unfortunately.
Yeah. And Tim, you mentioned in your last response to my question the impact that it will have on women, but show us how women's health is a real risk with the decriminalisation of abortion, and this could possibly result in the actual death of the pregnant mother by doing so. So I don't see how this is in any interest of our doctors, our nurses, our healthcare, or even our politicians to be responsible for this absolutely reckless and barbaric legislation.
It is reckless, and it goes against all of the evidence, and all of the health authorities say you should not take these tablets beyond 10 weeks. World Health Organization, Royal College of Obstetricians and Gynecologists, the drug manufacturers themselves, and so on. So they're saying it's not safe. So why are we saying, oh, it's fine to go ahead of that? I mean, it's unconscionable, actually, what's happening. And what's interesting as well is it's against popular opinion, from what we can tell. A poll was conducted just in January this year and found only 16% of the population thought that it should be decriminalised beyond 24 weeks to allow women to just carry out their abortions. So it's not like in France, like 80% of people apparently supported making it a constitutional right. Here, 16% only. So why are the politicians so concerned to do this, and why is it, why is it, I hope it isn't voted through, but why is it that it might be voted through in Parliament when most people do not support it? And I think there's a case for just telling the MPs that. Do you realise most people don't want this? Do you realise most people don't think this is a good thing? Most people think this is immoral. Most people think this is not what the kind of thing that people should be legislating for. In fact, there's popular support for reducing the term 24-week level, like I said, is much higher than most other countries. It's much higher than the rest of Europe, which is normally about 12 to 14 weeks or so. Popular support would be for reducing that and tightening up the abortion laws rather than liberalising it by decriminalising it. But these MPs are activists and they're pushing this, and sadly the track record of this current Parliament is bad when it comes to pro-life abortion votes that they've had.
Yeah. Also, Tim, I think this vote is sinister because it hasn't been publicised when MPs will have a vote on this one. The fact that this abortion legislation, the biggest abortion change in over 30 years, and certainly the biggest change really since the Abortion Act itself in 1967, is not a standalone legislation to vote on, tied in with the government's criminal justice bill as amendments, which is outrageous as well. Just share with us how this is vital that the church wake up to this, and that Christians get in touch with yourself and Christian Concern, so that our
I think MPs need to feel the pressure. They need to realise that this is something people care about. At the moment, they think people don't really care about it. It's not really interesting. They think that people have a lot of sympathy for women who are prosecuted for carrying out abortions very late term, and so on, when there can be very lenient sentences, but the law needs to say that this is wrong, and most people agree that the law needs to say that this is wrong, and the MPs need to feel the heat on it, and hear from Christians and other people saying, no, you should not be voting for this, no, we don't want this, please vote against it, please do not let this go through. I was encouraged because Miriam Cates wrote an article in the Telegraph, I don't know if you saw it, Simon, saying that if this vote goes through, she would vote against the whole criminal justice bill. And there may be other parliamentarians who might do that, and I don't know how that would work. The government's majority is about 24 or something like that. If you had 12 Conservative MPs voting against the whole bill, potentially, because this amendment hasn't gone through, and if Labour and all the opposition parties also decide to vote against it, that could be another way that this tumbles, we'll see. But that would be another kind of shocking state of affairs, but it would save the day in regards to abortion. And it shows that Miriam Cates and some MPs are seeing this as an absolute moral red line, that it's worth voting down the whole flagship bill of the criminal justice bill in order to stop this amendment going through, in order to stop this decriminalisation. And that is the kind of way in which Christians should be thinking generally. We need to pull out all the stops and do whatever we can to stop this amendment going through and make sure MPs are aware and realise and know that lots and lots of people are opposed to this happening. And even if they wanted it to happen, it shouldn't be happening this way, is kind of what we're saying as well. It shouldn't just be an amendment like this. It should be a proper debate, a national debate, not kind of tagged onto the end of a bill like this.
Absolutely. Maureen, isn't it time that the church woke out of its apathy and indifference and started to defend the unborn and start to defend the sanctity of life and send a Christian message to Parliament that you've sunk very low in terms of moral values, but you're not going to sink any further?
Absolutely, and they can do so with their votes. They can start voting for parties that actually support life and not support death. So that's one way we can do it. And I was actually going to say, Tim, I agree with you that Christians themselves can engage with their MPs and really put pressure upon them and engage with life charities. There's lots of life charities out there who are very engaged in this matter. Particularly when issues like this come up, the life charities are really focused and they really get the message out to those that subscribe to their charities. So the church needs to really get their act together in this respect, in every respect of the things that concern our values. But in this particular instance, it's vital because this is such a life and death issue that affects not just those people involved in it, but the Bible calls it polluting the land. That's the way it actually frames.
In reference to Cain and Abel.
Yeah, exactly. That's how it actually frames the effects of abortion on the land, not just on the individual concerned, but everyone is affected by it. So the church needs to realise this and get engaged in every way we can. Individuals, as church organisations, we have massive church organisations out there, so we really need to get involved in this issue.
Absolutely. And Tim, can you just unpack for us in the last minute or so how our viewers can approach their members of Parliament? Because you produced a very good fact sheet or list in guidance, so our viewers can write to their members of Parliament and to register their disgust at this government and this proposed legislation.
That's right. We've put out a guide to writing to your MPs. We've put out a list of about a dozen separate points that you can make. You can choose which point resonates best with you, express it in your own words. Write to your MP. We've got a link to work out who your MP is if you don't know who it is, and just send them an email and say, you know, I'm very, very concerned about this, and please can you assure me that you will not vote for this amendment when it comes up in Parliament. And it doesn't take very long, a few minutes really, to just send an email like that, making some key points, some of the ones we discussed today, and saying, you know, please, I urge you, don't do this.
So Tim and Maureen, thank you so much for being my guests on this week's edition of Politics Today. Thank you so much. And I want to thank you for watching at home. This is the time to wake up. Now is the time to come out of our indifference and our apathy, and to be aware that we are heading for the most anti-Christian legislation that we've seen in over a decade. It's important that we stand up and defend the unborn. So thank you for watching this week's edition of Politics Today.